Hey there everyone, Kay here on my homestead in Tennessee. And I thought I would start a new series today called Storytime, because I went upstairs to, why did I actually go? Oh, I went up there to see where Patch went, because I let her in. She always comes in late. And I gave her some food and then she ran upstairs, and I thought, well, let's just make sure she's not, going to the bathroom or anything. So I went upstairs and I was just sitting there, and there were, that's my chirp. And I was sitting there by the window and I just fell into memory, I've got so many objects that I've carried around in my life, and everything has a story. I mean, you don't carry something around in your life unless it has some kind of a story. And because you just shed a lot of things as you go along, and I've been around for a while, so I've shed a lot of things. But I still have a number of things, and one of them is this little chair. And it is a beautiful antique wicker child's rocking chair, and it's beautifully made, and it's probably it's antique, so I know it's at least probably 70 or 80 years old, maybe more, but it did have a little bit of a problem here. I had to glue it back together. But the story with this chair, and the reason I can't get rid of it, is because when I first went to LA, I lived in New York, and I was pursuing acting, and I did a number of jobs in New York, and then it just seemed like maybe where I should be was LA. And at the time there was something called pilot season. That doesn't exist now with all of the cable and streaming services and all of that. But back then, which now we're talking, I went out there in 1988, there still was a pilot season where they made pilots. They made a bunch of pilots in January, February, March, and in hopes of getting picked up for the regular schedule. And I met an actress in New York, and she's agreed to rent me a room, and I went out there for 3 months to try it out. And one of my friends, who is still my friend, John, I met him on the plane. Let's see, when did I meet him? I think it wasn't it was the first time I came back to New York for a visit, and can you imagine this? I wanted to look good when I got off the plane, and I had put rollers in my hair. Now this is the problem with, well, back then anyway, your hair had to look, smooth and done. If it was this length, it had to look like that, Well, you don't get out of bed and it doesn't look like that, So you have to use rollers or the blower thing, So I wanted to step off the plane in New York looking good. And so I guess I didn't care about what I looked like getting on the plane in LA, because I remember that I wore my hair rollers to the airport, and I had a real nice scarf tied around. I mean, it didn't look horrible, but back then it was, you could see a lady here and there showing up someplace with rollers with a nice scarf tied around it. Anyway, hard to believe now, but I did. And so I struck up this conversation with John, who was just a very, very affable guy, and we started drinking coffee, because it's a 5-hour flight, and he was sitting directly in front of me, and so we were doing this. We were on the aisle, and so we were doing this for like 5 hours, and drinking coffee, just talking all the way to New York. And so we became fast friends. And as you know, soon after I went out to LA, he introduced me to his friend Georgia. And Georgia Johnstone was her name. And she turned 50 in that year, in 88 or 89, I can't remember. She turned 50. So that was her age, and she was short, kind of short for a woman, but she had such style. She was an interior designer. And so, hold on one second. My cat is howling. So, Georgia and I became fast friends. She's the most stylish woman I've ever known. And when she would go out, she would have a leather skirt with fishnet stockings, and because she was short, she wore her hair in a short, very short haircut. It wasn't mannish, but it was very stylish. I can't even describe it, but it went up, and her hair was salt and pepper at the time. She was just starting to be gray, and she would wear shocking red lipstick and huge dangly earrings, and just gobs of costume jewelry that on her just looked fantastic. I just never was able to do that, but on her, it was just incredible. And she lived in West Hollywood, and of course she had her own home, and she was doing well at the time. This was 88, so we were still, things were good. And she had a very wealthy client, who's maybe still alive, so I won't mention names. I don't know her status. But she, I told her I was not happy in the living arrangement that I had. I needed another living arrangement, because I was just too old at that point to have a roommate. And so everyone, when they went to LA, and I guess they still do, they look for a guest house. Many people have guest houses, and many people rent them out for good sums of money. And at that time, you could expect to pay, well, I would say $900 to $1,200 a month for a nice guest house. And so I didn't have that kind of money to spend on that. But anyway, one day we were talking, and she said, this is before this chair came along. I'm going to tell you about that. One day, she came up and we met, and she said, I may have a guest house for you. I said, really? And because things were going well. The first year I was in LA, I booked 10 commercials, and I booked, I think it was 10 days on Divorce Court, which may even still be on the air, I don't know. It was not a great job, but hey, it was a union job. And I booked something else right away. And then I got General Hospital. So, but this was a little bit later. But anyway, I was thinking, well, I need to stay here for a little while, more than 3 months, and just see, how I can do. And so she said, Kaye, I think I have a guest house for you. And I said, really? She said, yes, it's her client, so-and-so, and she lived in Bel Air, You've probably heard of Bel Air. It's adjacent to Beverly Hills, and just as many rich people live in Bel Air as live in Beverly Hills. I said, really? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what is she gonna charge me, you know? And she said, well, you need to talk to her, you know. And I said, well, okay. Georgia was very, you know, okay. So I talked to her, and I went over to see it, and it was a very large room. She had her son living in there for up until he graduated high school, and he went on his, obviously, European trip after high school, and so she wanted somebody in the guest house to look after the place when she was out at her condo out in Rancho Mirage. And so anyway, I looked at the place, and it was this gorgeous room that wasn't that old, and it was adjacent to the lap pool and jacuzzi, and and it had brand new Berber carpet, and it had a king size custom made bed that she had, you know, she liked something else, so she had put that out there, and custom sheets, you know, Pretezi, of course, which I'd never heard of, but okay. And a king size bed, king size bathtub. And I just thought I had hit pay dirt. I just thought, oh my gosh. Okay, and so I said, well, what do you want me to pay you? And she said, oh, I was thinking 180, you know, basically to cover her utilities on the place. And I just said, okay. And it was a very interesting experience. But back to Georgia, very interesting experience. Georgia, you know, it's just interesting how you can just adore somebody that you don't see that much. But I was there alone, and so she was single, had always been single. Her brother lived in West Hollywood. Her mother, let's see, yes, her mother was alive, and she was watching after her, and at some point her father died. I'm not exactly sure of the chronology there, but because she was dealing in interior design, she knew all the antique dealers and all of that, and her brother had a whole house full of antiques. And anyway, when I got pregnant, you know, and had my son, Walker, this was the gift she gave me for Walker. You know, not like onesies and you know, things that you use a lot and chuck when the baby grows a little. Something that would last a lifetime, and I still have it. So, of course, at that point, you know, everybody, you know, children were sitting in things made out of plastic and all of that, and you know, I can just imagine at one time or other there was some child that's sitting in that with an old-fashioned dress or something. Anyway, it just reminded me of Georgia, and she was so striking, and I just adored being in her company. And she had this fabulous outdoor kitchen, which I would just not die for, but just love to have. Of course, in LA, you know, the weather's usually nice, and so you can expect to be able to eat out at, you know, all through the year. But she had one of those huge grill with a prep table and everything, so she could just go like that and turn it on, and she could be roasting these. She would roast these sausages with chorizo, and she would mix up, do these stir fries, and it was just so delicious. And I just thought, what an incredible friend, and I'm so lucky. And then cut to John found his soulmate, life mate, still married. He was really looking for someone when we met, and he found Linda, and they're still together, and they're very, very still in love, and that's just awesome. And so, meanwhile, Georgia's brother, he died from AIDS, and that would have been in 1993, I think. And so she was selling off all of his furniture and things, and I bought a bunch of antiques from her and had them in the house out in the Palisades for a long time. Well, first in the apartment in Hollywood, and then out after we bought the house out there. And but they were just the big old heavy oak pieces, and I just at some point I just said, we had small rooms in that house, and I just said, and then I got all my mother's things sent out from Tennessee. All of my mother's furniture and my things from Tennessee went all the way to California, and they came all the way back to Tennessee. It's pretty crazy. Not everything came back. The Frigidaire stove that my parents bought when they got married from his father, who was a GM dealer, and GM dealers sold Chevrolet and GM trucks and all that. And Frigidaire was made by GM. Did you know that? And so this is one of those solid American companies, solid American products. And I had, and when she sold her house in 2007, my father died in 2000, and she sold the house in 2007. I went over there, and because I had moved around a lot and I didn't have a lot of space in California, she still had a lot of my stuff in Tennessee. And all of that came out to California. And then some of it came back. Unfortunately, I just didn't have the space, and I just had everything stacked up in my little art studio, and at some point I just called Habitat for Humanity, and they just came and they got furniture she had made, desks, but now we have these heavy computers and backup drives and external drives for and printers, and it didn't have any of that when she made that desk, and I don't know who wound up with it, but it was a real handmade antique. A lot of stuff went like that. But anyway, to wrap up the story about Georgia, I think we went out for her 50th birthday. She took me out, and like I said, she had style, and she had a classic, I don't know what year that would have been, but no later than the 60s, and maybe 50s or 60s, classic Mercedes-Benz coupe, two-door, chocolate brown with a cream beige top, convertible top. And I'm telling you, when we went out, I felt like $1 million. And she would go up and we would valet, and I was just going, oh my gosh, they're going to take that car. And back then there weren't so many problems with things like that. But it was just so fantastic. And the other thing that was really unique about Georgia is she rescued cats. She was a cat lover, so we had that in common. But she would go around West Hollywood, and there would be all these cats that were abandoned or whatever, and people wouldn't get theirs fixed and wind up with babies, and they would just leave them on the street or whatever. And at one time, at the last time that I was there, that I saw her, she had 22. Now she just had a small lot with a little garage in her Mercedes parked in that, and in the back, and she had built separate walkways, or she had built separate walkways around the walls of the garage. So because certain cats had certain personalities, certain cats would fight, and certain cats could not be around other cats. And so she had several inside, and one would live in one room and another would live in another room, etc. And then all these separate walkways for them to exercise. And I mean, I don't even know how she maintained and serviced all of these animals. It was like, that's almost a full-time job. And of course the vet bills were enormous, because when she would get them, she would have to take them in, have them all fixed, all the shots, you know, and then if they were sick, you know, all of the medicine. She'd be giving cats medicine on a schedule. She was really amazing. She was an amazing person. And John got married to Linda, and I'm trying to think of our mutual friend. I'm just blanking. Marcia. Marcia was there, and Marcia was at the time married to Roger, who was a acupuncturist. And he was actually, I think, the only acupuncturist that wasn't Asian that I've ever gone to or met. And we all really liked Roger and everything. But Marcia and Georgia and I were at John's wedding, John and Linda's wedding, and it was at a Greek restaurant, and we had a great picture taken. Well, I had a camera there, of course, and I had somebody take our picture with my camera. And hopefully by the time I upload this, if I upload this, I will locate that picture, because that was way before digital. And I went in the dark room. I had a dark room starting from 1995. Yeah, I got a dark room carved out of our garage in 1995. And so I pretty sure I processed that and made the print, although I could have had the print made. In the beginning, I had some prints made before I got up to steam, but I have an 8x10 of the three of us, and we're all wearing hats. It was in the summertime, and we were wearing summer flowered dresses and big hats. And just really good times, you know. Georgia, unfortunately, she, of course, she buried her mother and father and brother before she got Alzheimer's. I did not see her afterwards because she had some caretaker. I didn't have the contact information. Nobody had, John, we didn't have the contact information of whoever it was. And so, because he was, you know, we were just sort of, we weren't friends with any of her friends, we were just friends. And so, this is what I hate so much. I've met so many interesting and wonderful people in my life, and many of them have passed on, and they just occupy such a strong place in my heart. And Georgia was one of those people. Very, very, very striking, very confident, very good at what she did. And I still have something from Georgia right here. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story, and if you'd like to see more stories, this is a test. This is a test of the emergency broadcast systems. If you would like to hear more stories, please leave me a comment below. And I don't want to do this if this is not what people are interested in. I know a lot of people most people are driven by the news today, so am I. But if you'd like to take a little time out and just hear stories, I've had some interesting experiences in my life. I wanted to write a book, but who's got the time? Okay, thanks so much. Please subscribe, hit the like button on your way out, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.